The great college town of Ann Arbor has always had a rich history. But what if I were to tell you that there has been almost 100 years of cinema history right in the heart of it all? And our guest today wrote about the majority of it. Welcome to Celebrate Michigan, the show produced on the campus of Madonna University. I'm Chris Benson. Today's guest will be talking about his new book, Cinema Ann Arbor. Please welcome Frank Uhle to the show. Frank, it's wonderful to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chris.
Okay, so this book it's beautiful to look at, I'll tell you that. It is sizable, many pages. How many roughly?
About 340 pages, weighs about 4.5 pounds. It's a coffee table book. It's not a book about coffee tables, but it's a coffee table book.
I love it.
Okay.
Why? What got you interested in this particular topic? Because to devote the time it takes, I imagine, to write a book of that length and do the amount of research you did for this, what sparked this interest in you?
Well, I was a member of one of the campus film societies that started in the 30s. And when I joined, it was 1979. I was an undergrad. And it was an exciting time. We went to movies almost every night. We were in the era of celluloid, right, where there was no video store, there was no streaming, there was no cable movie channel. So what happened was if you wanted to see an old movie or a new obscure, art movie or documentary, you had to rent, heavy film cans and get them shipped to you, and then get a room, hired and hire a projectionist. So we had these cinema groups on campus at University of Michigan. And they were common at most schools, but for some reason Ann Arbor had this kind of extra abundance. There was a lot of students, or the community was supportive, so we had all these film groups going. So I joined in 1979, and it was like a wonderland. I was going to see movies, and if you wanted to see some obscure movie you'd heard about, you could figure out a way to, you'd get your fellow members to vote, let's show that movie. So you'd rent the film, and you'd have to wait weeks or maybe months, and finally you'd see it. And it was an exciting time, but also it made you excited about cinema, because it wasn't like, oh, what am I going to watch? I'll just push a button and I'll watch it. You had to almost, like going to a concert. Like, you literally we made these posters that would be on everyone's refrigerator. You'd circle the date and you wait there, ready. So anyhow, that was a big part of my undergrad life. And in the late 90s or late 80s, actually, it just kind of tapered off and died away. So when the university celebrated its bicentennial in 2017, they were seeking content, and someone should write something. And I looked at what they'd already prepared, and there was nothing about these film societies. And so many of the people, and some of my friends had gone down to like significant roles in the industry. One of my housemates, a guy named John Sloss, has produced films by Todd Haynes and Richard Linklater and all these big people. And I thought, well, I'm going to write this story. So I started writing what was really going to be a magazine-length piece to go on their website. But I started interviewing people, and I exceeded the deadline. The bicentennial had passed, and I ended up pitching it as a book, and it kind of didn't get picked up. So I kept working on it, but I was just having fun. I was just like, I was able to talk to Ken Burns, who grew up in Ann Arbor, and he would have these vivid memories of how it helped him become a film person. So eventually, I started getting all these illustrations in too. So with the stories I had gotten, and there were many fascinating untold stories, and then the images, I reapproached the public library in Ann Arbor in 2000, and they said, oh, well, we'll do this for you. So they laid it out, and then they did such a fantastic job that University of Michigan Press, who had initially been hesitant on it, said, well, we'll print it. So that was how it came to be.
And I believe, are there over 300 pictures in the book?
There's actually over 400 pictures.
Wow. I mean, what an undertaking. And again, I love that you describe how it started from just an interest, something you enjoyed doing, and it grew into something of this magnitude. Did you have any idea it would go there?
I really didn't. And that was actually one of the joyful parts, because I never felt that pressure, like, I've got to get a book, I've got to write this many words.
Yeah.
It kind of organically flowed outward.
For those who haven't had the pleasure of being in the city of Ann Arbor and understanding what the theaters look like there and the town, describe it when you were a student there, because was that part of the experience and the allure of it?
Well, what's interesting is, and the book, tries to make clear, and again, everyone's vantage point is different, but the film culture in Ann Arbor was really built by the campus film societies. The city itself had kind of an art house theater that would come and go. They had, when the very first kind of campus film group was started, there were only commercial theaters that were just showing kind of mainstream Hollywood fare, and they didn't want to program imported films or limited kind of films. So the students started doing this on campus. And in my research, as far as I could tell, Ann Arbor was the first place with a campus film society in the country. So in 1929, a woman started showing films in a new building which had just been built with a new theater. But in 1932, they formed something called the Art Cinema League. And to my knowledge, that was the first in the country.
Wow.
And so we started early, and we immediately, they would seek out these films that had only played in New York, and they would get them. So it became this kind of cultural thing, and I think over time it kind of built on itself where, and I did a lot of archival research. I found documents, administrative documents saying, when the film societies were starting to fade away, saying, look, Vice President of Student Affairs, we have to support the film societies because this was a quote, just last week, I had a faculty member we were recruiting who said, you got more movies showing here than we have in New York.
Oh, wow.
And the memo went on to say, we need to prop up the film culture here because it actually attracts faculty and I know students as well. So it kind of it grew like this, and then eventually, as the film societies faded away, the Michigan Theater, which had been kind of a ramshackle, once glorious place, kind of was falling apart, and the State Theater both kind of built up into what they are today, which is a wonderful showcase for films. But when I was a part of the film societies, they were kind of gut bucket theaters, to be honest with you.
Yes, even just living in the Detroit area for the time I have, and I think about how you're describing it, and how this came from the students to be what we see today. So, so much more for us to talk about. Stay tuned. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk more with Frank Uhle. We'll see you in just a minute.
So gay. That's really gay. Dude, look at those hands.
Please don't say that.
What?
Don't say that something is gay when you mean that something is dumb or stupid. It's insulting. It's like if I thought this pepper shaker was stupid and I said, man, and this pepper shaker is so 16-year-old boy with a cheesy mustache. Just saying. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Yes, ready, ready.
Oh, come on, Randy. Animal shelter, here I come. And no, I'm not crazy or emotionally damaged. That's a stereotype. I just belong to a total loser. I'm a good dog. So if you want a pet, adopt. And if you see Randy, tell him he dropped his wallet.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arch-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson, and joining me today is author Frank Uhle. We've been talking about the book, Cinema Ann Arbor. You mentioned it is quite a hefty book. I love that you knew the poundage. And you know, over 400 photos. Tell me about the interviews. I know you've talked about a lot of different people. I was amazed at some of the names. So tell me about the interview process. How did you find all the people to include in the book?
Well, that was a lot of fun too. I just have to say I enjoyed this process so much. I know some people writing a book is like, you know, the fear of the blank page and it's tormenting, and I almost someone had to slap me and say stop, because I was just having a good time. But yeah, I started, again, I was trying to write something that was going to be a magazine length article. So I thought I'll kind of do a, not deep dive, I'll do a mid-level dive. But I started interviewing people, and then everyone I talked to would tell me some story that was kind of interesting and weird, and I thought, I've got to get kind of backup on this. So I tried to find a person that they had mentioned, and luckily, one of the key parts of this process was the University of Michigan's newspaper, student newspaper, the Michigan Daily, was digitized and made searchable as part of our bicentennial. So midway through my research, there was this suddenly 150 years of, you know, searchable things.
You mean you didn't have to go and search the microfiche?
No more microfiche. So I was like searching something, and I'd find an article, and it would mention someone by name, and it would quote them, and wow, I wonder if that guy still lives around this area. So there were certainly people I cold called that had amazing stories for me and were so helpful. Or a lot of it was people would say, you know, I can't really help you, but you should talk to my friend. And one of the greatest people that I spoke with was a guy who, this professor of philosophy, retired professor in Montreal, and he had an easily searchable name online, Andrew Lugg, with 2 G's. And I interviewed him, and he was sort of, I don't really remember that much stuff, but you should talk to my friend Rick. So I talked to this guy, Rick Ayers, who lives in the Bay Area, and he had been the president of the group Cinema Guild, which is the most prominent student group. Also, he was a member of the SDS. This is in the mid-'60s. Students for a Democratic Society, the heavily, you know, protest-oriented group. And it turned out his older brother, Bill Ayers, is the infamous Weather Underground guy. And Rick reveals, oh, I joined the Weather Underground too. I quit school when I was the chairman of the student film group, joined the Army, then quit the Army, he went to Canada, then he came back, then he joined the Army, and then he tried to get people to leave the Army.
Wow.
Then he joined the Weather Underground and changed his name and lived. So I started interviewing these people. I was like, my gosh. And as I went along, I just thought, I want the personal stories to be part of the book. I don't want to just talk about film group did this, did this. And there were hundreds of people that I could have highlighted, so I decided there were a few key people. So people like Rick and the professor, who was kind of the Forrest Gump, if you will, of the whole story, because he was there from like 1960 to like 2000. So he was the first person I spoke to, Professor Hugh Cohen. And he had many untold stories that he remembered vividly that no one else, you know, could have told me. So.
Wow, and I often think that hearing and listening to someone's story, another human story, is one of the greatest gifts we can give them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to truly hear what they're saying. And for you to capture that, it sounds like in a book where those stories would have been lost had you not asked the question. Any of the stories that stand out to you? I know you mentioned a couple favorites. It's hard probably to pick a favorite, or maybe someone that was surprising, or that you've gotten some feedback from readers about.
Well, one of my favorites is a guy who was part of this. So one of the things that happened in the film group days was they would bring special guests in. And, you know, Ann Arbor, we're kind of not in the middle of anywhere. I mean, we don't have film people coming through town. So the film societies, which I want to note, tended to be on the rebellious end of things. So that's why the book is called How Campus Rebels Forge a Singular Film Culture, because it was people that didn't quite fit in anywhere else on campus, and they would try to get interesting people to come. And in 1977, they got Robert Altman. They did a whole semester of Robert Altman films. They showed most of his films. They got Elliot Gould, the actor, and his producer and his screenwriter, and he came himself. And when he came, it was at Hill Auditorium. There was a big, you know, sellout auditorium full of people, like 4,000 people, and they were supposed to show a feature film, and then he was going to talk, but the film hadn't opened in town yet, and the movie theater called and said, you can't show that, we're going to lose all our sales. So they only showed like 20 minutes of it, and he had been backstage, and Robert Altman was a big marijuana fan, and Ann Arbor had just passed this law that was $5 for personal possession. So it was the most lenient in the country. This is 1977. So the Film Society people, who, as I say, were on the rebellious side, went backstage, and they were, sharing marijuana with Robert Altman. So he comes out, and he's got like 2 hours to fill. He thought he was going to talk for like 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And he's got like this yellow umbrella, and he's like walking around the stage with this umbrella. And then the first or second person who comes up to ask questions is this very nervous high school kid whose brother had invited him down, and he can't get a word out. He just stands there for like 5 minutes in front of the microphone, blah, blah, blah. And Altman finally goes, "Are you asking me a question, or are you auditioning to be in my movie?" Right? So the kid finally gets the thing out, and he turns all red, and he leaves. And like a couple days later, the Free Press runs a piece that says, if you were the kid who gave the weird question at the Robert Altman thing, they want to talk to you to be in his movie.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was able to track down this guy, Mark Deming, a sweet guy, lives here in Michigan still. He's a film and music critic today. And yeah, Robert Altman hired him to be in his next movie. So he was on screen with like Lillian Gish, Carol Burnett, Mia Farrow, and all these movie stars. And they gave him lines and everything. So that was a bizarre twist of like having a complete embarrassing moment and turning out to be like cooler than anyone else in your entire high school.
For sure. What a pivotal, and again, I think those moments, again, what a magical place, and you've definitely captured that in this book.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, time to take a break. So stay with us. We'll be right back, and we'll learn more about the Ann Arbor cinema's culture. See you soon.
Maria, so how's work?
It was fourth period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bell and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year, I might get to go.
Cool.
Fast-paced family life in need of a slowdown?
Hello, I'm Dr. Spruce. Did you know all those green shapes on maps are parks and forests? It's true. Visit discovertheforest.org and plan to visit a park or forest near you, instead of just wondering what it would have been like.
While the word forest might make you think of distant lands from far, far away, please note parks and forests are closer than you think, which means things like beautiful scenery, fresh air, and family time are also closer than you think.
They call me Prince like I'm royalty or something. But the places I've lived ain't no palaces. So I don't need grilled salmon or a new scratching post. Just give me a cardboard box and a can of tuna and we're good. You can even change my name. I'm cool being the kitty formerly known as Prince.
back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson, and I'm joined here again by author Frank Uhle. We're talking about the book, Cinema Ann Arbor. It is beautiful. I was just checking it out during the break, and there's just some amazing pictures in here, illustrations. When you look at this, the process, you gave us a little bit of it. What would you like to say about that? Telling us about the visuals in the book. It's stunning. There's lots that you've written here, but there's so many great visuals to look at too.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, to me, when I started the process, that was as important as documenting the history. I really wanted to take the reader deep into the reality of the situation, and I personally, when I read a magazine or books, that I really enjoy having kind of a visual documentation. So if I'm reading about something, it really enhances it to say, oh, there's a photo, and you can see, there's other aspects of the photo that are not just referring to the book, but you can see what the clothes were, the hairstyles were, and it puts you in that place a little bit more in that history. And as I started doing the research, I had a wish list of photographs. I'm like, I really like this, I'd really like this. And I looked and looked and I couldn't find them. And then suddenly, like one by one, they started falling in place. It was like a miracle. There's a woman who, you just flip past one of the pages, who was a performance artist at the Ann Arbor Film Festival. She still is. She came out this year, but she has been coming for almost 60 years to the Ann Arbor Film Festival and doing her crazy, really cool, entertaining performance art. And she had taken a bunch of color slides of herself in the day that were just beautiful and no one had ever seen. I asked her to, could you scan them for me? And she actually scanned them 3 times because we had fuzz all over them and stuff.
Wow.
But that was just one of it. But she told me, oh, talk to my friend Buster. And I called this friend of hers, Buster Simpson, and I was saying, gosh, one of the cool things that happened in Ann Arbor was the Ann Arbor Film Festival, which was started in 1963 as a part of CinemaGuild, basically. Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground played there as their first ever concert outside of the New York City area in March of 1966. And I said, gosh, that must have been cool. And he was like, well, I was there. And he said, I took a bunch of pictures. Would you like them?
Sure.
And I said, you're kidding me. And
wow.
Like an hour later, he emailed me. He had scanned them from the negatives. I had these amazing black and white photos, which no one had ever seen before. And no published photos existed of that event. So there were things like that, and he actually turned around and took a picture of the projection booth, and you could see Andy Warhol sitting in the projection booth.
Oh my gosh.
And there were other things. The Michigan Daily student newspaper would occasionally cover things, and they'd take a photo, but then, the photos were kind of blurry, and I was like, well, I could get the copy of the paper, but it would say the name of the photographer. So I started Googling these people, and I found a few of the photographers had kept their negatives. So
oh, how neat.
I found these amazing photos, like Frank Capra came in 1973 to speak, and I found the photographer, and he was like, I think I have him in my attic. And months went by, and then he found them, and he FedExed them to me, and the picture that was published in the paper was the least interesting picture. I found much better pictures.
Oh, wow.
So that was exciting to me.
Well, this book is chock full, and in the time we have for the show, we will not be able to cover all of it. Where can people find more information about the book and about you?
So the book is published by University of Michigan Press, and they have a website which you can easily Google. And we actually created a website. I should give my wife, Amanda Uhle, credit for building this beautiful page about the book. So cinemaannarbor.com has full information and a link to order and a few of the photos that we found and description of the book.
Well, it is beautiful, and I hope everybody takes a look at it. Again, with this kind of an accomplishment, congratulations, first of all, on the success of it. We celebrate all things Michigan here. You're definitely one, and this book is one as well. What would you say you learned about yourself in this process?
I think it gave me a lot of confidence, really, to be able to, start something and carry it through. And, it has won several awards, which has been very gratifying. But, I had never done something where I really followed my vision to the nth degree like this. And I'm very pleased with the end result. So, I guess it taught me that I can do more projects like this.
Do you have more projects in mind? Anything?
I'm actively working on 2 or 3 more.
Isn't that how it always is? You just get done with something huge, and people say, "Well, what are you doing next?" And you're like, "Okay, let me just process this." And I imagine you are going to lots of places, have been to lots of places to talk about the book and share the book.
I have. We had a little book tour last summer in California, and several of the people I interviewed have gone on to stellar careers in the movie biz. One of them's a big producer of independent films, John Sloss. Jay Cassidy has been nominated for 3 Oscars for film editing. A guy named John Nelson's won 2 Oscars for visual effects. So those people came to my book events in California. It was very gratifying.
Oh, I'll bet. Well, and I know we have you on campus, and you're going to be talking about the book here. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So as you think back on the history of cinema in Ann Arbor, what would be the most significant change? I know there's probably many things that have changed. How would you describe that now that you've done all this research?
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of a apples and oranges things, because when film was the part of the story that I really documented in the book was something you had to go to a theater to see. There was no home video, and there was no competition for. If you wanted to see a Bogart film, Casablanca, it was rarely ever seen on television. So we kind of had the market locked up, the little film clubs. But over time, we all dwindled away when the home video, et cetera, came in. So the Michigan Theater and the State Theater have kind of stepped up to where now they are the last bastion of art films. And it's a mix of current releases, art films, and then like one-off documentaries, and then of course the Ann Arbor Film Festival is still going strong too. So it's really hard to compare.
Well, and I hope that those who are out there, if there's any students watching, I would encourage them to attend those film groups and check it out.
Thank you.
And we hope you'll check it out. It's been wonderful having you with us. Thank you, Frank, for being with us today. And thank you for helping us celebrate all the wonderful things in Michigan. See you next time.